So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us here tonight to celebrate the launch of Nicole's new book, Emotional Intelligence. I'm Martin Liu of Lay Publishing, and we are, of course, the very fortunate and proud publisher of Nicole's new book. So tonight, Nicole is going to be in conversation with our special guest, Tamara Gillen. Tamara is the founder and CEO of Wealthy Network, which has as its mission to drive economic development of women globally by leveraging insight, collaboration, and education to empower and enable women today. Furthermore, for 12 years, Tamara was the founder and chief executive of Cherry London, which was one of Europe's fastest growing marketing agencies. So thank you very much, Tamara, for being with us tonight and sharing your insights and your contributions, which we are very much looking forward to. And then, of course, we have Nicole Soames, who is one of the UK's leading business coaches and emotional intelligence practitioners. In 2009, Nicole founded Diadem, which is a very successful skills and training and coaching firm that has clients all around the world. Prior to that, she held senior positions at Unilever and United Biscuits, where she trained large sales teams. Nicole is also a best-selling author. Emotional Intelligence book is her 5th book. In 2017, Nicole wrote her first book, the Negotiation book, which was a W.H. Smith Business Book of the Month when it was first published. And then the following year, she published the Influence book. This was then followed in 2019 by the Coaching book. And then in 2020, Nicole wrote her 4th book, the Presenting book, which at that time, Nicole declared would definitely be her last book. Well, of course, today we have her new book, the Emotional Intelligence book, with us, which also Nicole declared would be her last book.
We'll see.
The one thing we are pretty sure of is that Nicole is one of our most talented authors that's published with Lid, and that her books and her writing style really do, really do resonate very strongly with readers. So, I'm sure we will be doing our very best to bring her out of early writing retirement. But for now, let's enjoy this great moment and achievement. And so please, if Nicole and Tamara, a warm welcome.
Thank you. I actually have quite a loud voice. I'm not sure I need the mic. Thank you, Martin, for your kind words. And it's really humbling and lovely to see so many people here this evening to help me celebrate the launch of the 5th book. As Martin said, I definitely remember saying after I think I only said it after no, not the Influence book, after the Coaching book, I said, that's it, I'm done. And then the Presenting book happened, and I'm like, okay, this is a Obama mic drop moment. This is a pen drop moment. I'm not doing it again. And then I got influenced into writing the Emotional Intelligence book. So I feel like I have some explaining to do as to why we are here again, and that I've got these wonderful supporters in the room. So, I've been training and coaching now for 20 years. Believe it, it's gone so quickly. 20 years, and prior to that, I spent 12 or so years working for Unilever in United Biscuits. I worked and led many teams, I managed teams, etc. So I think it's fair to say, with 30 years worth of experience, I know people. I know people, and when I reflect back on all of my experiences, what if I draw some conclusions, the thing that resonates with me, and the thing that I've noticed is that anything to do with people, behaviours and emotions is messy. Maybe it's just me, but I definitely recognise that when you think about people's emotions and their behaviours in the workplace, everything to do with emotions is messy. And we make our decisions based on how we feel, not based on what we think. So at Diadem, as Martin was saying, we run training and coaching programs to help people acquire their better commercial skills and better leadership skills. And of course, I would say this, but our training programs and coaching programs are second to none. But it used to puzzle me that there was something missing, and I couldn't quite wrap my head around exactly what it was that was missing from the programs. And then someone introduced me to the idea of EQ, and I hadn't heard of it. EQ is the shorthand version of emotional intelligence. This is quite a while ago, and it really grasped my attention and grabbed my curiosity. So I went away and I learned loads about EQ. I became a practitioner, and as my experience and depth of knowledge of EQ grew, I started to realize that if you could combine emotional intelligence with leadership training and coaching training and how to negotiate and how to influence, it's just like a game changer. It's like a differentiator. And again, in all my years of experience of running training and selling training programs, I don't think many people have ever asked me for EQ training. Yet, it is a massive differentiator and game changer. The Carnegie Institute have done loads of research on this, and if you buy into their research, they say that only 15% of your financial success comes from your technical skills or your financial skills or your marketing insights. 85% is down to what they would call your human engineering. And I totally buy into that. And I don't know if you've ever thought about the softer skills like that. And why are they called soft skills? There's actually nothing soft about EQ. It's actually really hard to acquire. So as I stitched all of these philosophies and tools and techniques into the training program, that was frankly the easy part. The how to be emotionally intelligent is the hard part. And that is why I thought, do you know what? I have to put all of this stuff into a book. I have to make it easily accessible for people because we all need it to live a successful and fulfilled life. You only have to reflect on what's happened this week and as to how much emotional intelligence is needed in the world today. So that's why we're here, because I really passionately believe that EQ is needed in the workplace, it's needed in teams, it's needed in organisations. And so often it's over-intellectualized and very often I've got people nodding in the audience, it's so over-intellectualized. Yes, there are lots of books on EQ out there in the marketplace, but they're really hard to digest. So I wanted to make it accessible for people because I think it's the most underrated skill in today's workplace. So that's why we find ourselves here today. And you know what? I tried very hard. Lots of you in the room know me very well. I try very hard to live my life according. I practice what I preach. At least I try to. And I have the full suite of skills. And let me tell you, there's still room for improvement. Because the what is easy, but the how is super difficult and super hard. So just indulge me a little while whilst I just walk you through. Look, in the book, and I hope you all feel inspired and provoked to pick up a copy. In the book, I take the reader on a journey to help them access their emotional intelligence. And Tamara's very kindly offered to provoke a conversation with all of us today about EQ. But before we do that, I think I should perhaps share with you actually what it is, so that you can take part in the conversation.
She's got me here on the stool. And
I'm now going to do the Chris Whitty thing and go, next slide,
How's that
please.
working?
So what actually is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence fundamentally is a set of emotional skills and social skills that are most effective at influencing others. So for years and years, I've worked with EQ. I understand EQ. Lots of you have been coached by me in the room. Next slide, please. Actually, 2 slides on. Done that one. Okay. There are many beliefs that people hold about what emotional intelligence is. These are the 3 most common things people say when I ask them about emotional intelligence. They believe that, well, it's a nature thing, not a nurture thing. You're either born with it or you're not. You either have EQ or you don't. That's a common belief number 1. Common belief number 2. It's just about being nice, isn't it? It's just about being warm, being cuddly, being approachable, being a friendly person. And the third belief people hold is, I think some of you have already read it on the slide, that women are more emotionally intelligent, females are more emotionally intelligent than men. Okay, none of those things are true. They are all myths. They're all myths. Okay, so here comes the heckling. Right, from my husband, brilliant. Okay, so here are the facts. I love the irony, it's brilliant. Okay, so here are the facts. Your IQ is pretty, I know there's research maybe dismissing some of this, but pretty much your IQ is set by about the age of 17. But your emotional intelligence builds over your lifetime. If you think about, I think we're most likely to spot lack of EQ than EQ itself. Think about young children that you maybe have of your own, or maybe you know some. Young children don't really have any emotional intelligence. You don't really start to develop EQ until you're in your 20s, late teens, early 20s. So younger kids struggle to share. They're quite focused on themselves. Don't want to upset any young people in the room. And then the other fact is, the other interesting fact is, now I'm going to upset some more people in the room, that your EQ peaks at about the age of 55. So you know what? Getting quite close to the peak myself. So yeah, your EQ peaks, but I am talking about your innate levels of emotional intelligence. But just like muscles, if you understand what emotional intelligence is and you can build it, you can change the shape of the curve. So obviously if it peaks at 55, that means it goes down after that. So again, don't want to upset anybody in the room, but think about older folk. You might notice lack of purpose, lower motivation, bit short-tempered. I don't know. See, we tend to spot lack of EQ more than it itself. So, you know, if you understand what emotional intelligence is and you think about it as a muscle, you can learn to change the shape of that curve. So that's demyth number one. Okay, of course, emotional intelligence is about being warm and being empathic and understanding others. It is not about being nice. It's about understanding others. Of course, you want to be an approachable person if you're going to be emotionally intelligent, but it's so much more complicated than just being a nice person. And it is not soft to be nice. I massively believe you can be uber successful and be a good person. And then it's, you know, it's not just a female skill. Women, I think, are, and I'm going to be stereotypical now, but I think women tend to be more open to expressing their emotions. So they share them more. But it doesn't mean to say they're more emotionally intelligent. And on average, I think some of the things that women are more emotionally intelligent at, like, for example, relationship skills or empathy, which is about being nicer, they let themselves down on self-confidence. They are more likely to suffer from imposter syndrome. So there you have it. We have to demyth EQ, and I think this is part of the reason I've put the book out there, is to really help people acquire these skills. So I've talked about how you spot lack of it. Well, how do you spot people with emotional intelligence? And these are some of the traits and characteristics of people who are emotionally intelligent. You know, they are able to give and receive feedback. Giving and receiving feedback is a skill. It's not easy to do. Most people save it for their annual appraisal, and then it's out of date. Emotionally intelligent people want to improve, they want to be fulfilled, they want to keep developing and keep growing, which is why they're open to feedback. And they also want the best for people around them, which is why they give feedback. Other things on there, good listeners. I mean, if you're going to be a person that is a nice, decent person, you have to listen and understand others. Emotionally intelligent people are good collaborators. They're able to work with teams and work with other people, and so on and so forth. Resilience, gosh, that's something we need loads of in today's workplace. I think we are going, I think this was one of the ladies said this at one of your events, I don't think we're ever going to go as slow as we are going today. Things are just going to get faster and faster. So we need to be resilient and adaptable so we can keep pace. So these are the traits of people who have emotional intelligence, but it's not on its own the game changer. It's about combining it with your technical skills, your marketing skills, your financial skills, your customer intelligence and acumen, etc. So in the book, I divide Brilliant.
Seamless.
Seamless. Okay, so in the book, I divide emotional intelligence into these 4 categories to help you start to process and understand what it is and how you can infuse it into your everyday ways of working and being. So it has to start, the absolute cornerstone, if you want to develop your emotional intelligence, it starts with you. It's not possible for you to understand and have the bandwidth for others if you don't understand yourself. So knowing yourself is the cornerstone of emotional intelligence. It's about, and we'll talk a bit more about this, I'm sure, when we chat in a bit, but you have to tune in and understand your feelings. If I was to ask you all right now, put your hand up and tell me what you're feeling right now, I think most of you would go, I don't know, I know what I think, but I don't know what I feel. Accessing your feelings is much deeper. So understanding what you feel is the starting point. And then once you understand and you become aware of your emotions, you can start to understand, well, what triggers you? What do I like? What don't I like? So the thing is, our feelings and our emotions massively impact our behaviours. And then those behaviours are what others see in us, which is why it's so important to take care of the shadow you cast in your life and in the workplace. So knowing yourself is the absolute starting point. But it's also so important that you understand your perspective, right? How do you see the world? How do you deal with the predictably unpredictable? You know, change is all around us. How do we cope with change? And that's the navigating the world. Next, you've got to manage yourself because we're under so much pressure. If you keep operating, humans are hardwired to keep in their comfort zones. We don't really like being outside our comfort zone. It's much easier there. It's called a comfort zone for a reason. But you see, if you operate in your comfort zone for too long, it actually shrinks. But we have to be brave and get ourselves out of our comfort zone. And to do that, you've got to manage yourself. If you keep doing what you've always done and you expect different results, you are technically insane, according to Einstein. So managing yourself and setting yourself up for success and managing yourself live in the moment when you're in a perhaps higher stakes situation takes a lot of emotional intelligence, self-control, for example. And then last but not least, given that EQ is all about a set of emotional skills and social skills that are most important if you want to influence others, you have to then be able to be with other people, know how to build really good relationships. One of the ingredients of being able to be a people person, not a people pleaser, that's different, being a people pleaser, but being a people person, someone who finds it easy to get on with others, you've got to have this ability to listen and understand where the other person is coming from. And I just think that in the world we live in today, there's no time for that. You have no time to really get to know people. It's very surface these days. So managing your relationships and making sure that you get the most out of them. I don't think there are any roles in life today, and I'm not just talking in the workplace, I'm talking generally in life. I don't think any of us are individual contributors. We all, to be successful and fulfilled, we all have to be able to get results through others. And that's why managing your relationships are really important. So as you walk, the book contains lots of strategies, lots of tools and techniques to help the reader access these skills, which I think are so important. But you've got to work at it. You shouldn't expect to get it overnight. Like any other skill, it's complicated. Each one of the building blocks that I've gone through interlink with each other. It's complicated. You should expect, a bit like your IQ, which takes 17 years to master. That's why we send our kids to school for that long. It should take that long for you to become as emotionally intelligent and fulfill your potential as you could. So that's why we find ourselves here today. And look, Tamara's very kindly agreed. This is your we're on now. And she's very kindly agreed. We've got a few thoughts, a few questions. We're going to try and have a conversation, but let's try and open it up to, I hope that I've sort of sparked some curiosity, got you thinking and feeling, as I've shared some of the headlines as to what you'll find in the book. But
come on down.
Come on down. You can take a seat now.
My microphone has died.
We don't
Alas, but
do
we
we
don't
need
need one.
mics?
We've got loud voices. We know. I have to say, which is a weird coming home for me in many ways, I have actually known Nicole's sister Ruth. I lived with when I was 24, when I first arrived in the UK, and I've known the family for a very long time, and I haven't seen some of the family for a very long time. And Ruth's husband said to me when I was running Cherry, you need to meet Nicole. She is amazing, and she does this most amazing negotiation training, and you need to get Nicole to help your people. You run a partnership agency, you broker some of the biggest partnerships for your clients, get Nicole in. And we were a small company, and it's really hard to invest in something like negotiation training for all your people. It was phenomenal. To this day, I use Nicoleisms. I'm like, go hi, and my team are like, what do you mean hi? And I'm like, hi is why negotiate against yourself? Let the other side negotiate. Go hi. Whether you're selling your business, raising equity, or selling your house. And she codifies things, and she tells it to you in such human terms, and it's stuck with me. And I have had the privilege of borrowing Nicole, coercing Nicole to come and arm and equip the women that we have in Wealthy Her who are selling their businesses, who are negotiating with their families that they're not there, who are trying to navigate their personal lives. And she is always amazing. And I think I have every single one of her books. Every time we're putting something together, I go get that book on influence, go get that. And we steal from it. So it is an absolute privilege to be here when you have given to me so many times in your voice. I was slightly scared because she's so good that I was like, I do this all the time, and it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And I'm sorry, I'd love to talk person. My mother's here unexpectedly from New Zealand visiting, and last night with my 9-year-old son, who I think has got quite good EQ, but I'm going to tell him, no, you're not going to have it for some time. We were watching Blindside, and I was crying my way through it, and we went to bed, and he was like, Mummy, before I go to sleep, why do you always cry? What's wrong with you? And I was like, well, interestingly, darling, I think it's empathy. I feel what people feel, and I over-index on feeling. But what your book made me realise is actually putting empathy, it isn't about being nice. Putting empathy into action as leaders is really hard.
Yeah.
I think of myself as overly empathetic, overly nice, but I really do struggle sometimes on collaboration, getting it right. What are some of the tools of taking all of this and putting it into action as leaders? Because it isn't easy. And what are some of the things that you can share?
Okay, so as I was saying before, it starts with awareness. Like as a leader, you need to understand, well, what are the attributes that you have that you are good at, that, like collaborating and understanding that empathy and feeling. But you have to start with awareness. You need to be, if you're going to talk to your team about developing their skills or becoming better at negotiating or whatever it is, you need to go into those conversations knowing how you feel about those situations or that person before you even think about how you're going to have the conversation.
One of the things that you have said to me as well about that, thinking about that, knowing yourself, but was also around blind spots, was, in fact, when you're under pressure, sometimes your blind spots are sharper, and sometimes your behavior is worse because you're under pressure than if you were your good self.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways, have you seen any blind spots in your journey, or some of the ways to know for those blind spots? Because they sometimes emerge in action as well as, there being just natural blind spots.
I think everyone's got blind spots. We all do. When you qualify for as a coach, and I think there's some coaches in the room. I know there's some coaches in the room. When you qualify as a coach, you have to get a load of feedback, because how can you possibly coach other people if you don't understand yourself?
That's why I could never be a coach.
So it can be brutal getting feedback, but you have to, if you're going to build an understanding of yourself, you've got to take a bloody good look in the mirror. I think it's really important to ask people around you who know you, who work with you, to maybe close down understand what is the impact that you have on other people. And as a leader, to get the best out of your team, you have to try and create psychological safety. And that means is people want to work with leaders that they understand and know what they think and they feel, which is all about honesty. And if you don't know how you feel, then how can you possibly share it with other people? So I think closing down blind spots, you can do psychometric profiling, you can understand what your EQ profile is and do a 360 version of that, which is where you ask for feedback from maybe people above you or to the side of you or below you, to try and work out what are the things that I don't know that others know about me. That's what a blind spot is. But feedback and exploring and understanding yourself on a deeper level is maybe about understanding what triggers you, like trying to work out and get to the bottom of what my triggers are. Working with a coach is a brilliant way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you found that it changes for people? People's blind spots shift over time?
Like as soon as you're placed into a brand new situation or you are in a higher stakes situation that you haven't been in before, there's bound to be things that you didn't know about yourself. So through your life, what triggers you will change. Things like work-life balance. What is a work-life balance for you in your 20s might be completely different for you in your 40s or your 50s, for example. So your blind spots and what triggers you, which might come out in feedback, could change over time.
Can I ask you a question about, because I hear it as a leader, and it's a word or a phrase that's talked about more and more, is this psychological safety. What does it actually, do you know what I mean in practice? And I know, because as a leader, I sometimes go, I think I understand what that means, that people feel comfortable, what does it mean for you?
So that is exactly what psychological safety is. Psychological safety is that people feel like they can express themselves and be honest and actually share their opinion and not feel like they're going to be judged by it. Like we can have an honest debate and an honest conversation. And if you haven't got a good foundation, good relationships, then people won't open up and they won't share really what they're thinking and feeling. So that's when you have a sort of command and control structure where no one speaks unless the boss speaks. It's literally the opposite of psychological safety.
Do you think that in the book there are tools to help unlock that and understand that for people?
That the book's less about leaders; it's more about
just people.
You. But people. Yeah, in order for you, that's all of the chapters on the chapter and all the sub-chapters about getting to know yourself and understanding. Many people suffer with imposter syndrome. They just don't admit it to themselves. Like I'm sure everyone in the room, maybe I'm making assumptions, at some point in their lives have thought, they're going to find me out at some point. That kind of, I'll just fake it till I make it. That idea. Or I shouldn't be here. I don't deserve a seat at the table. Or the client knows more than I do. Or my team knows more than I do. So if you don't, if you want to be an authentic leader, which is how you create psychological safety, you have to understand what is your imposter and what you're going to do about it.
I think, honestly, Wealthy hears about female confidence. We talk a lot about this, and I know I research heavily in this space, and I will always go to events. People say, death to imposter syndrome. How dare you even bring it up? I don't suffer from, and I'm like, well, we all, and which is really interesting, and we were talking about triggers. It's in the book, and I was thinking you were asking me questions of what are your triggers, and I would say I'm very outspoken, forthright mother there. I'm very confident, but a massive, not relating to her, massive trigger for me is in meeting or just generally, because I was never very good with numbers. I work in a finance business. Don't tell anyone. I'm terrible. Excellent at English and history. Imposter syndrome. However, I always was terrible at anything mathematical. I hated it. I would ugh. And so if anyone starts, literally, I can hear their tone change with me. And I'm not very good with numbers. I almost see red and it infuriates me. And then I'm not almost responding in a normal way. And so I have massive imposter syndrome about some things. And I really, really do. But some people don't know what their imposter syndrome is. And I think one thing that really resonated with me in the book was knowing those triggers and not doing, because everyone in my team says they know when it's coming, because I'm like, to be clear, and they're like, oh dear, she's really vexed about that. If my accountant takes his glasses off and goes, I'm like, Chris, to be clear, and I'm thinking, oh no, I'm doing it. But talk to me about triggers and help me. Help me navigate those.
So this is the whole thing about EQ. It's so complicated. But if we really zone in and think about how do I manage my triggers, first of all, you've got to know what they are and where do they come from. But the live in the moment stuff is what I spend quite a lot of time coaching people on in the workplace. Like, how do I handle myself when I really want to lean across the table and punch the person in front of me, and not communicate that that's really what I want to do. And that kind of, how do I have the conversation in such a way that I don't give that impression? Because if you come across in that way, the reaction that you might get from the other person might be, "Oh, I'm going to see you and raise you on. I know more than you do."
Which I do.
And equally, though, you don't want to come across as subservient, because if you come across as subservient, people will walk all over you. So the live in the moment challenge takes self-control. And self-control is about really developing strategies to respond, not react. Now, this stuff is super easy for me to sit here and talk about, but I'm often challenged about how do I respond, not react? Because sometimes you get that email that triggers you, or you have that conversation with somebody that triggers you. And when you're a coach and you're a practitioner, you have very high levels of awareness. It doesn't make it easy not to be triggered and to manage yourself really well live in the moment. But at least if you're aware, that's something, and that's a starting point. But if you take the idea of being in control, if you're in control, and that's not wresting control from the other person, that's being in control of yourself. That's about breathing. That's about staying calm in the moment, making a rational decision. If you are panicking or angry or frustrated, which is an emotion, you will be less likely to be able to think straight. So breathing, staying calm, thinking rational thoughts live in the moment. And then taking a nanosecond to think, well, hang on a second, what's caused them, this is empathy now, what's caused them to react in that way? What's going on for them? Where's that coming from their point of view? Sometimes people are difficult on purpose and they've got a blind spot that you might be able to give them some feedback on. Or it could be they're fighting a battle that you didn't know about. But that's not, I feel sorry for them. That's, I understand what's going on for them. And then I've got some time to think about, well, what's the right response here, not reaction. If you give a knee-jerk reaction, you can end up in a ding-dong very easily. So
it's very, and also I also loved about the book, and I love what you do say, because I'd say my blindest spots are with my 9-year-old son, where I am not in control, and I find myself giving the nanny advice. He's the child, you're the adult. Listen, respond positively, but think about, and then I'm like, and in fact, putting that into action in those moments. And he was having some of the stuff came that you've put in the book. He was having with a counsellor, and the counsellor said, "You're very annoying because you always go." He says, "This is hard," and you go, "Oh well, let's look on the bright side of that." And it says you're not showing that you empathize truly and you understand what he's going through. And again, this isn't for leaders, this is for people. And it is a superpower that can help you in all areas of life, which is what I loved.
Well, you're now talking about optimism, like don't worry, it'll be fine. And that's sort of, there's a sort of too much optimism is blind optimism.
I'm annoying in that way.
But optimism, humans mirror each other. So go back to the conversation we were having before about being triggered and having a ding dong with someone. If you end up in a ding dong, it's more likely to get worse than better, which is why having self-control and managing yourself live in the moment is key. But humans mirror each other. So if you can be calm, you're more likely to create a calmer conversation. All of this stuff, as I said, is dead easy to sit here and talk about. It's really hard to do. But as you develop your EQ, you start to notice it more. And humans are predictable. So it's predictable. If you understand your own triggers, you might appreciate other people's triggers more. And you might be able to anticipate, well, when I go into these sorts of conversations with my 9-year-old or with a colleague or with a peer or etc., you might be able to anticipate, well, what are the things that are likely to cause a ding-dong? And how can I plan for that better so I can respond versus react? So lots of strategies like that in the book.
You and I are both big champions of this, and it is people to realise their potential, ambition. Me, particularly with what I do, it's the ambition of women, and we know that women don't always, and I certainly have had my imposters and my things, and I've certainly see it through women, don't always back themselves. What do you think are some of the things that come out in the book around backing yourself and finding that ambition and being able to see it through in yourself?
I think it's not just a female thing, but yes, I hear you. I think women are just more likely, in my experience, again, being stereotypical. I don't know if anyone's seen the Barbie movie, but there was a brilliant moment in the Barbie movie where she says, well, we can't be too nice, we can't be too tough because we get labelled this, and we can't be too thin because we get labelled, you know, all of that stuff. And I think women...
That's why we're wearing pink. Oh, no, it's not. It's a book cover. It's not
nothing
Barbie.
to do with that. So I think the thing is, we're more likely to feel the judgment of others. So we wouldn't want to fail, so we don't push ourselves as much, I think. So, you know, a lot of people talk about the glass ceiling. I don't think it's a glass ceiling. I think it's sticky floors. I think we hold ourselves back more. You could argue that we're better at balancing our lives, and therefore we're thinking more about all of the other responsibilities that we have. I don't know. I think it's different for different people. But we'd rather be successful and that's a comfort zone thing. Like, you'd rather be successful and stay in your comfort zone than stretch yourself. But if you don't stretch yourself, you're never going to find out what you might also be good at. So, you know, if you want to be successful in life is, I really believe this. I think it might have been my grandpa that told me this. Maybe my parents will correct me if I'm wrong, but life's not a dress rehearsal. You get one life, and making the most of it, I think, is really important. And living a successful and fulfilled life is actually right at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's what humans are striving for, is fulfillment and satisfaction. And ambition, like setting yourself goals and keeping moving forward so that you can be the best version of yourself, is motivating.
Whatever that version is. Now I'm going to take it down. No, I'm not going to take it down. I can't. As I said, I think of her as Yoda, but we've got many of her family members in the audience. And so there will be things, she's got her blind spots, she's got her triggers. As you were writing this, were there some things that came up and you were like,
I regularly reflect after coaching sessions and go note to self. You know, as I said before, I am by no means perfect, but none of us are the finished article. We keep changing, we keep developing, we keep growing. I'm totally human, right? I get triggered by various things. I don't think I should wash my dirty linen in public. I don't know why. All of a sudden, my eyes went over that.
to this group particularly?
I purposely wrote the book because it's not easy, this stuff. It's just not easy. And so you've got to do the work. And as I said before, just because I've got all the strategies and all the models and all the ideas doesn't make it any easier for me. Maybe blissful ignorance was better.
Yes, Yoda. Oh no, sorry. But the other thing as well, which I say to women all the time, and I know it to be true, is be brave and have straightforward conversations. Mm-hmm. And they are perhaps the hardest conversations to have, because so often we just don't want to have them. Even in our family, we have them about what happens when you're not here. And it's emotionally, it couldn't be harder. What's your advice for people about being brave and having those conversations, and some of the things that you've learned?
I mean, it sits in the category of working with others and understanding others. If you don't say something, then the other person doesn't know. I think you've got to ask yourself the question, well, what won't happen if I don't say something? What will happen if I don't say something? And what will happen if I do say something? And if you keep pushing things under the carpet, you end up with a very rucked carpet that you'll trip over. And it actually gets worse. You're better to manage your self-control. Think about, well, hang on a second, what's upsetting me? What's stopping me from saying something? Deal with that and then have the conversation. It's always better that out than in, I reckon.
She ruined my week last week because I have who Laura knows, and possibly you may have met, Hazel, a very difficult member of my team who is incredibly hard to manage, and I love her and I admire her. But I was like, right, tomorrow you've got to be brave. And I had this very open and honest conversation with her, and I was very direct, and I was direct about her team. It's transformed. She's like positively like everything's transformed. And I was like, Yoda was right. This is so annoying. This is so annoying. And then I was a bit like, wow, it made her able to really talk to me about and actually there were insecurities and what she thought was being viewed, what she thought was being said, and why. So I thank you, Yoda, for that. And I have two final questions. One is why? Why should people go out, buy this book if you haven't already said it? But one final thought.
Well, it's a great stocking filler. And someone who unfortunately couldn't come this evening said to me, I'm going to buy 5 and subtly put them under people's desks in the office, people who I think need to develop their emotional intelligence. Look, it's not a massive investment in terms of the price ticket, but it's an investment in terms of the work that you want to put in.
I'm going to send it to my partners, not Laura, not the amazing Laura, and the partners that get it, they will not know that really it's a subtle, no.